Stay tuned for our next Connecting Our Community show, where we'll continue our discussion with Ray Anderson about working within the deaf community and hearing impaired. It's fascinating, and I know you're going to love it, so stay tuned. Hi, I'm Pat Shoemaker, and welcome to Connecting Our Community. Tonight we again have as our guest the Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson. He is with the Center for Living the Sacred, Phoenix Fellowship and Institute, a metaphysical ministry and a holistic training and life development center. And this is the second show. The first show was fascinating. We ran out of time, so I'm so glad that you could come back, that we could continue the discussion. You were talking a little bit on the last show about the history of American Sign Language and how it came to be a language and all of that, but we never really got into the signs themselves. Okay. And I know that there is the alphabet, and you can spell things, but I would imagine that that would take a lot of effort, energy, spelling ability. So
yes, but the manual alphabet, which is the actual ABCs done with your hands, is a must. A lot of times I will find students who think they can somehow bypass, because, I mean, if I can sign name, then I don't have to spell N-A-M-E. But when you get to, for example, if I say your name, what is it? How do you tell me your name? You'd have to spell it.
Right.
The name of this building, there's no sign for it, so I have to spell it. Names of people, stores, etc. I mean, yes, we create, within the deaf community, yes, they create name signs or signs for certain things that become more common. But in general, there are no signs for a lot of things. Turquoise, there's no sign for it. So you spell it. You can't avoid finger spelling. You can't avoid the alphabet. So I always tell people, because it is a very challenging thing, especially for beginners, because my finger spelling and your finger spelling are as unique and different as our handwriting. So if I'm someone who chicken scratch, and you see my hand spelling, you may not be able, was that an E? Was that an O? Was that an, I can't tell what that is. So it takes a lot of practice to actually get your receptive skills and your expressive skills to be top.
So is there, because my name is Pat, pretty common name I would think, is there something that there is not? So I would have to spell P-A-T.
Exactly. Now, as I said before, there are name signs. So within the community, as you socialize, in order to, per se, abbreviate my name, if you were to meet someone and they say, you met this guy at such and such, and you say, oh, you mean Ray Anderson? And they may say, Ray? So this has become one of my, and I have several name signs, but this is one of my name signs.
That you can put on television.
This has
Sorry.
This has become one of my name signs. Now, typically...
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but is it that because, like, ray of light?
Nope.
Or no, there's no reason
for
it?
No, there is. That's where I was going.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So typically, name signs are connected to either a physical characteristic or something personality related. Depends on who you ask in the community, because there are some rules that vary. So many years ago, I was learning deaf-blind interpreting, so learning how to interpret for someone who is deaf and blind. So my teacher happened to be deaf and blind, and there was a part in my final exam where I laughed at what I had to interpret. And because deaf-blind interpreting is tactile, his hands were literally on mine. Once again, think Helen Keller, hands on. And so I laughed, so my body moved as I was interpreting. So later, Rich said, Ray, before you were laughing, what was up? So I explained, and he said, okay, so that was your name sign? That was one of your name signs? Yeah, all of that stuff, get rid of them. Your new name sign is this, because the sign for to have a belly laugh or to bark is either that or that. So that with an R became my name sign. So those do happen within the community, but typically no.
But if someone else named Ray happened to walk up, that would not be the
Nope.
name sign for that person because
Correct.
there hadn't been that personal connection.
Correct.
I see.
Correct.
So there's the alphabet, and if you would you do slowly?
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y,
Okay.
and Z.
And those are standard
Yes.
no
those are-
matter what.
Exactly.
Okay.
Just like our regular alphabet is standard,
Yeah.
yes.
And also, you had said at one point that there's different interpreting, meaning idiomatic or word for word. So explain.
Yes, okay, so you can transliterate, which literally is English word order. So I might say, and I have options, because I could do signed exact English, which means is, the, quickly, all that stuff, it's in there.
Yeah.
But I don't have to do it. I could say, for example, so what is your name? That's English word order.
Right.
What is your name? Now I could do the same thing, what your name? Take the is out, get rid of it. So what your name? Still English word order.
Yeah.
Or I could go idiomatic, which is straight concept. I don't need to do what is you or your, because I'm looking at you.
Right.
So I can get rid of that.
Yeah.
The fact that I'm asking a question, it's a WH question, a who, what, when, where, why, which, how. Grammatically, that's eyebrows furrowed, head tilt. So that automatically means who, what, when, where, why, which, how. So all I need to do is name, and this, with this, and I'm looking at you so I know it's you, what is your name? One sign rather than five. That's more conceptual, more idiomatic.
Huh.
Also, if I may,
Yes.
if I were to say, yesterday I saw two cars crash. One car hit the other car on the passenger side. It's a lot of signs.
It's a lot.
If I just say, yesterday I saw car, that right there says, or that, you see how the cars crashed. That's conceptual. It's more idiomatic versus me having to give a sign to every single word, which is transliteration.
Yeah. So when you learn to sign, are you taught one way and adapt to the other, or are you taught both ways?
It's a very good question. Ideally, if you're in a skilled program, and it depends on your teachers, ideally you're learning both. Because I always tell people, depending on the deaf person and their preference, because some deaf people, because of how they learned in school, if they were mainstreamed and forced to be more oral, forced to speak English, write English, etc., they don't do idiomatic. This is their preference. So, or a lot of latent deafened adults. I've already spoke, I've already heard, I already know English. That's going to always be my preference. If that's the deaf person you're interpreting for, you give them transliteration, not idiomatic. But on Tuesday, what if you get another deaf person and they want idiomatic, but this is all you can do? Then you can't take that job, because
Right.
Code of Ethics, you have to match your skills to the job.
Wow.
You have to be in alignment with that job. Many years ago, I was asked to go interpret, and it turned out that the thing I was going to interpret was a KKK rally. And I didn't find out until I heard the news. Well, Saturday afternoon, there's this thing going on in the park. And I said, wait a minute, that's the, wait. And I made a phone call, and that's what it was.
Wow.
That would not have been good.
No. For anyone concerned.
Exactly.
Oh, wow, there's a picture.
Yeah.
So if you were a professional interpreter, they have to really do the research on you as well as the circumstance?
Theoretically.
Theoretically.
What generally happens is a deaf person who has whatever it is, a doctor appointment, a job interview, or whatever, they will contact an interpreting agency. The agency will, whether they have a list of, and they'll say, oh, well, Pat, she lives in the area, look at her schedule, she's available that day, we'll send it directly to her. Or they'll send a mass email out and say, we have a job here, Department of Justice, this is the day, this is the time, who's available? And whoever's available, and they first come, first serve, they match you. So part of it is they know your skills, the agency. Part of it is you should know your skills. And if you're not qualified for that job, if you prefer transliteration and they say they want idiomatic, don't take the job.
Yeah.
If you can do both, either or, and you have the skill, then you could do any of them. But you should know your own match with that job.
Yeah. And just one other question, because it brings up so many questions, to think that you have to have someone, you know, I'm hard of hearing, but I hear. And to think that I would be someplace where no sound got to me and I had no idea what was going on in a life-threatening type situation, even in a traffic court. Not that I've ever been to a traffic court, of course, but you know, in something like that, to think that a perfect stranger has the results in his or her hands as opposed to me being in control, that is terrifying.
Yes.
And I'm surprised that more deaf people aren't constantly terrified, or are they?
I would say no. I mean, deaf people are, by culture, I mean, for my own word, by nature, a very resilient people. I mean, oftentimes we refer to them as disabled or handicapped, but as a community, they don't ascribe to that. We refer to them oftentimes as hearing impaired. They refer to themselves as deaf. So, and it's capital D deaf. So we see it as a pathological thing, and they see it as a cultural thing. So culturally, they're fine with it.
I'm going to have to interrupt. I'm so sorry. We have to take a break. We will be right back. Please stay tuned. We're going to talk about something so interesting when we come back that you're not going to believe it. So be back with us in just a second.
When you donate goods in response to an international disaster, it's expensive.
They have to cross the sea, pass through customs, be inspected, sorted, then finally delivered.
And often they arrive too late to help, making your good intentions feel a little empty.
There is a better way.
Cash donations are fast, simple, and allow professional relief workers to purchase supplies close at hand.
Cash is best. Learn more at CIDI.org.
It's our duty to serve veterans and military families who serve their country in the most difficult ways imaginable. Together, we can say thank you in so many ways. Small acts of kindness mean more than anything. With our support, veterans and military families can face even the most difficult challenges. Let's honor their service with ours.
Hi, and we're back with Reverend Dr. Ray Anderson talking about the deaf community and hearing impaired. You're just so fascinating. I hate to take a break, but I promised the viewers something so remarkable that they would want to stay tuned. And to me, this is remarkable, although to you, I guess it isn't so much. But apparently you have a choir, a chorus. What would you call it?
Technically, I refer to them, or refer to us as, it's an American Sign Language theatrical performance company.
And what does that mean? Do you, because this isn't just interpreting, this isn't just people who stand at the side of the stage at a Broadway show or something. This is a full-on production by people strictly signing?
Yes. So the name of the group is Believe, which is an acronym: Being Empowered, Living Inspired, Exemplifying Victory Every Day. So many years ago, there was an American Sign Language performance group that did music in Pittsburgh, and I wanted to join them. So I went and spoke to the people, and they said, no, don't want you. So I said, okay. Went to another one, and the guy said, I'm the only man in the group, and I'm going to stay the only man in the group.
Oh.
So I said, oh, okay, thank you very much. Went to another one and was told, I don't know you, you're not one of my former students, I don't want you. Oh, okay. So I went back to my teacher, Karen, and said, Karen, none of them will let me join. And she said, you're good enough, start your own. So I started my own performance company. And over the years, we've had moments of growth and coming back down. But basically what we do theatrical things, songs, skits, things that inspire. I like to refer to it as edutainment, where we educate people about communication, about oppression, how to overcome that, how to know who and what you really are, because if you know that, there's nothing that can stop you. So we perform at various community events. We've performed at various churches, schools. I mean, we were recently at the Delaware School for the Deaf performing for their community day. Yeah, so we do all kinds of things.
So you perform just for deaf audiences or for hearing audiences as well?
Both. We've performed for all deaf. We've performed at Gallaudet. We've performed for all hearing, and there were no deaf, because once again, it's about opening the lines of saying, how many of you know sign language? None of you. Okay, so this is your introduction to that. Let us show you what this looks like. Let us show you what you can do with this. Now, when you do meet a deaf person, you don't have to just sit there and stare and, look, they're deaf people.
Yeah.
You actually learn how to say hello. You actually learn how to say, how are you? And then you can start to facilitate communication. You don't see them as those people. You see them as our people, our community, part of our community.
People.
Right.
So that honestly, it just blows my mind. So is there any sound during this? I mean, is there music?
Yes.
And your players are interpreting the music, or
Okay, so it's a little difficult to just explain without having seen it. So I know once the viewers actually see the clip, because as you mentioned, when you think of the interpreter, you think of there's a stage, like at the Kennedy Center. There's a stage, there's a performer, and the interpreter is either on stage or off stage, but they're
to the side.
They're off at the side.
Yeah.
And what we do is we're the performer. So the music is playing, and we dance, and there's interaction, there's all-out movement. So it's not just people standing there just signing, it's an all-out performance.
Dance, yeah. When I was telling some of my coworkers about your company, never having seen it, not really knowing, they said, a couple of them said, well, so they must do the players feel the vibration and move to the vibration. Is that the way it works?
So previously we've had, at different times, we've had deaf members in the group. Some of them were Gallaudet students who have graduated and gone off to become social workers and psychologists in their own right. So when we have deaf members in the group, the music has to be loud enough for them to feel the beat and rhythm of the music. Otherwise, there's a lot of counting and memorization of stuff.
Right.
So when she goes up to do heaven, that's when you turn and do God or something. So there's a lot of timing related cues. When we're performing for a deaf audience, we're all hearing. So there are no members in the group right now that are deaf. The music isn't loud for us. It's now loud for the deaf audience,
I see.
so they can feel the
the
rhythm in the chairs and whatnot. And in the floor, they can now feel it.
Ah, that's remarkable. And when you have a mixed audience, hearing and deaf,
Yes.
do you adjust things?
It depends
for
on where it
that?
is. At Gallaudet, for example, the music is extremely loud.
Yeah.
So they're hearing and deaf mixed, but it's Gallaudet.
Yeah.
So it's a deaf environment.
Right.
So in a deaf environment, as they used to say, when in Rome, when in a deaf environment,
Right.
it's going to be based on their culture. If it's a hearing environment, such as we're at a hearing church, then it's a hearing church. So their music levels or sound levels will be what they normally are. They might bump it up a little, but it's not going to be over the top, for what we would call over the top, the way it would be in a deaf environment. So it modulates, it varies.
Yeah. Are there certain, I know people tend to think that, if you're speaking to somebody who does not speak English as a first language, that if you just speak louder, that makes them understand, which of course is ridiculous, but we all tend to do it, unfortunately. Is there something with a deaf interaction? I know, as I said, I'm hard of hearing, and I've noticed that sometimes if I'm in a store, the clerk, they're not called clerks anymore, but the person behind the counter or whatever, might turn to get something or whatever, and I lose that whole part of the answer to my question. And when the person turns back, I have to say, could you please repeat that, or I just pretend that I heard because I'm embarrassed that I don't want to make it seem like I have any kind of a disability. Is there anything that is sort of a standard no-no for people in the deaf community if we are interacting with someone who's deaf? Is there something that we just shouldn't fall into that stereotypical trap, or?
Yeah, there are a couple of things.
Yeah.
So one, like you said, don't yell. Yeah. Don't look at the person and say, hello, what it? Don't do that.
Yeah.
Just speak normally, speak directly. And like you said, be mindful. And I tell people to do this. I don't care if the person's deaf, foreign country, I don't care what they are. Face the person you're talking to. And I know when you're multitasking, like you mentioned in the store, you may turn to get something out of the register, but just be mindful that, address the person. So look directly at the person, speak the way you would normally speak, and don't be afraid or shy to say, did you understand what I said, or do you need me to write it down? Never. The number one thing with communication is, if I'm communicating with you, I want you to understand me.
Right.
Otherwise, what's the point?
Right.
And if you're speaking to me, I want to understand you. I want to hear you, and I want you to hear me. I want you to understand me, and I want to be understood. So we need to do whatever we need to do to make sure that happens. So one, don't assume deaf people can read lips, because not all deaf people read lips. And some who do don't even want you to know that they do, because then we try to over-enunciate to make and that makes it worse.
Right.
There's a statistic that says of what they are actually reading on your lips, it's a fraction of this. So don't just speak normally, and push comes to shove, right.
Okay, and that is not considered offensive to say, let me write? Okay. Are there any standard signs that, now I know that if you go to a foreign country or speak to someone who speaks a truly foreign language, and you say anything in their language, they think you understand and can speak, and they start to speak, same as Americans or English people, English-speaking people. Is there something that would possibly be kind of an icebreaker that you could say or sign?
Hello.
Hello, and that's,
I mean, that's a good start. Signing hello, so it's basically what we would consider a salute. Making sure it comes away from the head, not bringing it in, because then it's a different word. And it's not.
Okay.
So we want to make sure we're coming away from. So hello.
Okay.
Things like good, which is also the sign for thank you. Good and thank you. How, if you're going to ask someone, how are you? So how, and then point, how are you? So I'm good, I'm so-so, I'm happy.
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 Yeah.
I'm fine. So things like that. And, yes and no are good ones. So yes and then no are good ones to also know.
Okay.
And generally deaf people know. I mean, I always say this would be the example. If you went to someone who is a native Spanish-speaking person and you say, hola, ¿cómo está usted?
You've heard me speak Spanish.
Do you think that person's going to assume that you're fluent?
No, I don't
No.
think so.
So a lot of us, when we're beginning how to sign, that's the equivalent. Deaf people can, you're beginning, and they may say, oh, you know how to sign, at which point you say, a little bit, un poquito.
Yeah. Exactly. And one other thing that you were saying when we were on the break, which I find fascinating as well, is that American Sign Language is the only sign language you said that uses one hand.
Yeah, or in terms of the alphabet. We're the only
okay.
one-handed alphabet. For what I know, for example, British Sign Language, it's a two-handed alphabet. Everyone has a two-handed alphabet. We have a one-handed alphabet. Also, numbers from 0 all the way up to 999 can all be signed with one hand. You don't bring your second hand in until you go to 1,000.
Wow.
So everything.
I'm sorry. What would an alphabet look like with two hands?
And to the viewers,
Yes.
just so you know, this is a disclaimer. I don't know actual British Sign Language, but it's things like A, B, C. I mean, it's literally, it's a two-handed. I mean, you can Google that and you can actually see someone from England doing their alphabet.
Yeah. And there are many websites that people can go to.
Yes.
This has been a fascinating, wonderful, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I
Thank
hope
you.
that you all learned as much as I did, or more, hopefully. I want to thank you so much for being with us tonight. For more information, you can visit his website, and that would be, he's got a metaphysical ministry and a holistic training and life development center. So that's www.clspfi.org. Of course, you can join us at the MyMC Media blog, mymcmedia.org, website. And just thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Dr. Ray. And please join us next time for another great edition of Connecting Our Community.